What? No, I was just saying, like, starting.
Jack says he's filming and I'm not allowed to talk, everybody.
I'm not. Good evening. It's a very cold evening, actually, that you join us on. But in front of me, I've got an oil pump for an M62. Specifically the M62 going in this E36 behind me. What I've been researching tonight is how to go about starting the modifications for this, for the Adamat swap kit. Now, I already accidentally took one circlip out of it, just trying to free it up, and then it pinged out, and that's the oil pressure valve assembly. So basically this video, I'm just going to do a quick a walkthrough of how to modify this, because the instruction manual is pretty difficult to follow for an Englishman's simpleton brain, because it's very roughly translated from Polish. Hopefully, don't fuck it up. Okay, so step one on the schematics is to basically strip the pump into its two pieces, the casing, and prep the shaft for being spun round, because you basically, with this modification kit, you basically reverse the oil pump and reduce the oil pressure from the pressure valve. So we'll start by taking the cog nut off, and then we'll split the casing down with all the 10 mils on it. That was loose. Last bolt, that really long one in the back there, and then it has split in two. So there's the back half. We don't really do much with the back half, to be fair. I know that we've got to drill this hole out and modify it for the new pickup, but put that to one side. The main part that we deal with is the front half. When you pop your shaft out, pause. What they want you to do is modify your shaft and your main pump gear, and the way you do that is get it in a vise or a G-clamp or whatever, and the gap from the back of the cog to the end of the shaft has to be within 17.4 and 17.9 mil. To be within tolerance. So get that in a press. One of these will probably be your best mate. So that'll do. Okay, cool. So shaft adjusted. That gap now behind the cog is 17.5 ish, but that's within spec, so that's better than the 20.21 mil it was, or 20.9, whatever. Next thing to do on the front of the casing, wrecking the gaff. On the front of the casing there are these bolts here, and these big, like, flange looking things, just big pointless pieces of metal. You need to cut those off. They were for mounting on the original engine, but these use a separate mounting method basically. So they need to come off, and then we can drill out the hole on the backing plate for the new pickup. I'm just going to do this in a different place to try and keep this area as clean as possible. We've also got to take 5mm off the tip of the where the sprocket comes out. So just bear that in mind as well. So bolts off, big front piece off. Now I've got to take 5mm of the shaft hole off and flatten these down. Basically flatten it down till it fits. Okay, so that is all the modifications to the front part of the housing done. That is, well, nearly. That's 5mm off the shaft output. Took all of the surface off this side, took the bolts off this side, flattened these two parts down here. Basically what these do is sit up against the front of the oil pan, so you need them sort of as flat as possible. And looking down it, to be honest, it's all pretty flat, but I can make adjustments in the future when the thing's put back together if necessary. The only thing that you might find you need to do when the pump's in the engine is this circular part here actually threads in and out, and that adjusts the chain tension. So obviously the further out that is, the more tension you have on the chain. Apparently this is like, this setup with this sump is like maximum tension already, so you'll only need to reduce tension as opposed to raise it. So if you did need to lower the tension on the chain, you just grind a bit more off the top surface there when you're fitting it all up, which will be a bit tedious, but I'd rather it be like that than have a chain that's too slack when I put it all together. So I'd rather have to take it apart later. So now that the front half of the casing's done, put that to one side and start on the rear half. Main thing that I've gathered so far with the rear half that you need to do is just chamfer out the edge of this hole here in the top corner. This is going to accept this bushing, and what you do is you press that inside there to the same protrusion as the outer sealing face, because the other side of this you put in your oil pickup feed. For that you'll need one of these puppies. $18mm drill bit. I'm going to go get this in the vise, drill it out, stick it in the press and press it in, and I'll try and show you as carefully as possible as what I mean when I say that it should stick out a little bit. I'll apologise for the terrible lighting in here, but hopefully with a torch, can you see that inner lip in there? It's like 5mm deep, if that. What we need to do is drill that 5mm lip out to 18mm, so that this 18mm bush can be pressed into there. Essentially what you're doing is extending that inner surface to being that deep and sitting in there like that. Okay, so how I'm doing this, I'm not proud of, believe me, and I would not recommend doing it the same way. I would use a pillar drill or a drill press or whatever you want to call it, a mill, if you've got a mill for whatever reason. So like I say, that bush needs to go in there. I am basically just going to try and get this straight as possible, because like I say, we don't really need to go that deep. Done. So, what I meant by it only needs to protrude to the mating surface was, you see how it's resting up against this outer edge and it divots down inside. That bush I've just pressed in there wants to be level with this outer edge. Easy. So now that bushing's in, the rear part of your housing's ready for your new oil pickup. Now onto the really important bit. Okay, so you've done all of your clearance in, and you've done the shaving of the top, the front half of the casing for the oil pump tensioner. But now is probably the most important part, and that is this thing. What this is your oil pressure valve. It's a little assembly. There's like a top hat that goes on top of the spring. The spring and the spring bucket. Now there's two different versions of this spring. There's a long one and a short one. And what you need to do basically is shorten this down to reduce the oil pressure, because the oil pressure of, I don't know why, I'm not that much of a mad scientist, but when this spring is in this new oil pickup, it needs to stick out a certain length. Differs between whichever spring it is. So you've got 61mm and 67mm springs. The 61mm wants to be protruding this oil pickup tube anywhere between 4.5 to 4.9 mil. And if you've got the 61mm spring, you need it sticking out anywhere between 1.5 and 2 mil. Obviously, the shorter the spring, the less oil pressure that the engine will create. The longer the spring, the more oil pressure it will create. So let's find out what spring I've got. The 61mm. So I've just measured this. That's how much is sticking out free spring. That's how much it needs to stick out. So it's not giving me much to play with. So I'm going to do this very, very slowly and try my hardest not to fuck this up. That to me looks perfectly within spec. So that is what it protrudes like. I might shave just a gnat's knacker off that. That is all I've taken off of it. Half a coil. That goes in. Cap goes on. And then there's a circlip. You get a new circlip with the kit, which is for demonstration. That one, not that one, the other one. You get a circlip goes in, job done. But I am going to thoroughly clean all of this because it's got gammy old oil, sludge, all inside it. So before any installations, I'm going to clean it up. Okay, so all those parts have just been cleaned up with brake cleaner, obviously. So now what I'm going to do is just basically assemble the pump and then do the pickup tube afterwards. So I'm going to lube it up with some oil we've got knocking around, just to be on the safe side. No one likes starting off dry, do they? Especially not your engines. so that circlip's in after a 3-man effort. Now there is another circlip that goes in this hole on the top, but you are replacing the O-ring that is in there with a circlip. There's a little cap, so we'll do that bit now. Right, that plug took some getting in. As you see, I had to butcher it with a hammer and an extension, but plugs in and the circlip's in. It's a bit loose, so I'm not really a fan of that, but shouldn't go anywhere, hopefully.
Yesterday, we came out the bathroom and I looked at him and she was like, "What have you done?" I was like,
mallet probably would have been a bit more elegant, but it's in. Oh, barely in frame, but you get the point. So, it's another day. Forgot to film the outro for the video, so there you go. That is a modified oil pump. I've cleaned it up. One thing I will say is the circlip that they supply to block the old pickup off of is a bit small, so I'd probably recommend getting a different one. I've seen people say that this is quite a lengthy and scary process, but to be honest with you, it was fairly simple. So if you've got any questions that I was slightly brief on, feel free to drop me a message. I'll put the Instagram tags in the video, and if there's anything I can help you out with, I will try my best, because this is my first time doing it too. So if you feel like it, you could subscribe, and hopefully some point around the Christmas period this will probably be in the engine, in the sump, and the engine will be in the car for mock-up purposes. So, because I am documenting this entire process. So, yeah. Safe. Yeah, if you stick around, subscribe, or if you feel like it, you can subscribe. Fucking hell, I can't get that right. If you feel like it, you could subscribe.